Judge Andrew Napolitano, and apparently he has his sources too, just as liberal media claims they have theirs. Judge Andrew Napolitano angering the American left. Yesterday morning, he was appearing on Fox and Friends on the Fox News channel, and he said, don't blame the Russians for all of this. He said it was people within the U.S. intelligence community who were leaking these documents that supposedly embarrassed the Democrats before Election Day. And that's because, according to Judge Napolitano, a great many people in the intelligence community look around at the incompetence of the last 8 years, and they didn't want Barack Jr., that is Hillary Clinton, to go ahead and do another 4 to 8 more years of the same incompetence. So what they did is they basically revealed to the world just this is the gang that can't shoot straight, if we're making any gun references this morning. Famous book, by the way, by the columnist Jimmy Breslin, who I went to hear him speak one time, and he explained he came up with a title, told some book agent about it, and the book agent said, "We'll buy it." He didn't actually have a book written, so he literally had to go write a book to match the title. We've been telling you the last couple of weeks. I want to get into more of this depth about this whole Russia hacking claim and the like, and these are all just efforts to try and the left is like a cornered beast right now, and it realizes its agenda may be coming to an end, and so therefore it's trying to pull out every last stop it can to subvert the will of the American people in the constitutional system. Because even though they claim they've got the popular vote, Donald Trump made a good point when he said there was election fraud. I likely won the popular vote if you subtract that. And after what we saw happen in Detroit during the recanvassing, clearly he may be right, but the media out there, and I've said there's two things going on here. Either reporters are too dang lazy to go check out his claim, or media doesn't want to check out his claim because it'll be true, and it'll harm their claim that Donald Trump is the illegitimate president. 823, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 29. While you're thinking about the end of the year, a lot of people think about the end of the year and they start to contemplate, what they're going to do when they reach the end of the working era in their lives. We've been telling, I don't know why my throat has a tickle in it this morning. I've just been sitting here drinking water throughout the day, but must be the change in the weather all over again. We've been telling you about our friends Waddell and Reed. They handle investments right here in Twin Falls, Idaho. And coming up on an 80th anniversary of doing that. Any business that's been around 80 years is doing something right. It's one of the oldest firms offering mutual funds. And in fact, they do something very rare. They offer two mutual fund families. And as I've said, they're not going to take your money and fritter it away on somebody's pie in the sky investment idea. They're going to go with tried and true strategies to grow what you have so that the day comes along when you no longer want to work or you no longer can work, you've got something to live on other than just Social Security, and you can have something to eat other than dog food. And they'll work with you on an individual basis because they know that everybody out there has a different set of goals. When it comes to that day, they'll no longer be working, or even younger folks who are looking to plan for their college, the college education of their children. So they take, that all personally, and they will take that money, that planning personally, and help you manage your future. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Loretta Lynch, as I mentioned earlier, the outgoing United States Attorney General, was at a forum sponsored by the liberal publication Politico yesterday when she accidentally, I guess, unveiled or revealed the fact that the Russians didn't actually hack anybody's votes.
And fortunately, we didn't see the sort of technical interference that I know people had concerns about also in terms of voting machines and the like. But a lot of education went on about that, a lot of training went on about that, and a significant number of states did reach out to DHS and talk with them about those issues.
Of course, DHS also apparently had been hacking into voting systems in the various states, which we still don't have an answer as to why that happened. What I found interesting, she made this statement. This was part of like a 2.5-minute statement she gave in response to the moderator of the political forum. And he being a fellow traveler, he didn't ask her for a follow-up on that because media is trying to give you the impression that the Russians got inside voting machines and literally changed votes for Donald Trump. But that's not at all what happened. So the vote totals are legitimate in the sense that Trump won all of those states in the middle of the country, flyover country, that gave him the electoral votes he needs to be the next president of the United States. And yet they are trying to do everything they can. And here's where my worry really comes into all of this. They have originally, as I said, they blamed the FBI. When that didn't work, they claimed it was racist voters. When that didn't work, they claimed you were too stupid and you bought into Trump's promises. And that didn't work. So they keep flipping the page trying to come up with some new excuse. Last week, I kept hearing from those of us who are on the conservative side of this media equation, and there are a handful of us, that this is really an attempt to delegitimize Trump's upcoming presidency. That may be true. Remember, they claimed back in the foundation of the Tea Party, 7 years ago or so, and then when Republicans, who, by the way, because they're not Democrats, they are in the opposition, and that's what they're supposed to be, opposition. They kept claiming that we were trying to delegitimize Barack Obama because he is a person of color. Well, people voted for him in large numbers twice, which would prove otherwise. So that doesn't hold any water either. But I think they are really trying every last-ditch effort to prevent Trump, not delegitimize him, but to prevent him from becoming the next president of the United States. Now, this is a little bit ridiculous to think they could pull it off, but this is their Hail Mary throw at this point. It's not going to work because in 3 days, the Electoral College will sit down and it will certify Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. Then what does the angry left do at that point? I've been thinking about that long and hard, and this is where it becomes very dangerous. If they can't remove Trump through the efforts of Hollywood actors or through claims that the Russians gave Hillary's votes to Donald Trump, if they can't remove Donald Trump in any other means by suggesting John Kasich or Jill Stein, then how do they remove Trump? Now, what I'm suggesting, it just gives me, the chills when I bring it up. Because there's going to be some leftist kook or kooks out there, and likely from what we've been hearing over the last few months, there are millions of them. I don't want to even get into details of what could happen because we don't need a visit from the Secret Service here in Twin Falls, Idaho, and here at 415 Park Avenue, the location of the radio station. But if they didn't stop Donald Trump, it looks as if their goal is by any means necessary. Then what is necessary to these angry liberals come January 20th, 2017? We better keep that in mind. And I'm telling you right now, yes, there are lunatics out there on the left by the millions. And these are going to be very, very dangerous people once Trump actually takes office in their efforts to remove him. And we better be very, very vigilant following Inauguration Day and the 4 to 8 years that are going to follow. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 30. This is what happens, and I'm going to remind you, if you look at the history of leftist political parties around the world, when constitutional means no longer work and their efforts at subterfuge, then they turn to violence. It is the history of leftist political movements around the planet. We've got more on this topic coming up in just a few minutes on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.
That is from a gift that arrived yesterday from UPS. Donald for President. It's a large pen. I want to thank my friend Patrick Murray. I've referenced Patrick on the air before. Patrick is retired from he was an undercover federal narcotics investigator, knows a little bit about the tough life, and he was a backer of Donald Trump, and he sent me this pen. It's got a large Donald Trump hat on the top, and when you depress it,
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.
Actually, there's several sayings.
Look, I'm really rich.
So there's about half a dozen of those that the pen plays, but it's actually a working pen too as well. Hey, just a quick note. I mentioned these people a few minutes ago. The Last Stand Survival Shop, which is in Jerome, Idaho. Passed by it just a couple of weeks ago when I was on my way to the dedication service for the Lieutenant or Sergeant Dan Brown Idaho Veterans Fallen Soldiers Memorial, and I turned left at the light and drove down to the park. But I wanted to mention we've been talking about these people for months on the air, and I did a show out there in August, and they're offering classes right now, training classes, and some of these classes are small. Intimate was the word they used. In other words, a lot of people, you feel you get lost if you're in a really large training class. So they're offering these small classes, and you can have beginners and experts there, but you can learn a lot from the experts if you're a beginner. They also build a lot of firearms because they have gunsmiths right on site. And we've been telling people too as well. They have all sorts of survival tools, food storage, for instance, 72-hour kits to years' supply of supplies of food. And we wanted to point out, too, that they're going to work with you about your family needs. They'll ask you a lot of questions when you come walking through the door. The shop is veteran owned, and they offer discounts actually for current military and for veterans, firefighters, paramedics. And we wanted to point out, too, if you're an NRA member, you get a discount. You get a discount on a lot of things if you're an NRA member. My former fiance, unfortunately, she didn't come to Idaho with me. She's a lifetime member of the NRA. And you wouldn't look at her and think that woman can handle a firearm, but she knows how to do that. We also wanted to point out too, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts will get discounts if they drop by the shop, and we'll be telling you a little bit more about this in the coming week because they've got a lot of great specials this time of year. It's 8:36. We have a caller with us. Caller, it's 30, and you're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning. It's really blizzard out there this morning, but just look what happened when they couldn't get their man in there, and Reagan got in there, and what was it? Less than 3 months, Hinckley come along, and if that bullet had been just placed a little bit further over, they
About
would
half
have
an inch, right?
they would have assassinated. Yeah, like an inch, or by the grace of God, that Reagan wasn't assassinated within a short time after he was, and so they can, there are techniques to brainwash um, people to send them out and give them keyword. I'm convinced that kind of training is available, and so these people, they get brainwashed totally. I was always amazed until I went to this one meeting years ago why so many of our soldiers turned against the USA during the Korean War. They were um, prisoners, and when they were released, or I should say, yeah, they were released, and they were doing all kinds of things against the U.S. So there's washing techniques out there, and
Well,
I think
and you know what? I think it's even bigger than just sometimes American liberals. I'm going to share a clip here. I hope in the next
sure.
20 minutes with Nigel Farage, who's pointing out that because Trump is part of that wave of anti-globalism, that there are a lot of very important people who stand to lose a lot of money if Trump shuts down or he takes away, their cake and their ice cream, and they're not happy.
Oh, absolutely, and the big thing, of course, studying the global politics, is, of course, is they want a one world government, and of course, the elitists want to be in charge of that, and I think Trump has openly come out against the United Nations. The refugee program, of course, is ministered by them, the UN, and so forth. But look at the new EPA director. Just that position alone could make a tremendous difference in the economy here, make us less dependent on these foreign oils and energy
Well,
sources.
and you can go out
And
and you don't have to worry
but
about somebody regulating a mud puddle in your driveway.
well, yeah, I mean, the things right now, they've regulated about everything except which way the toilet paper comes off the roll. You
Hey, I
know,
got I got to let you run, but thank you much for the call. We've got a hard break coming up in just less than a minute, and I do want to mention a caller referenced the weather this morning. It's going to get a lot colder. We're looking at single-digit lows over the next 3 nights, and that cold winter. And we're not even at the first day of winter technically yet. And you may have an issue with your heating at home. You better give a call. In fact, if you do, before you get too much farther along here, because you don't want to wake up as an ice block this weekend. You've got to call the professionals at Ramsey Heating and Electric today. The team at Ramsey's, they're out in Burley. They'll make sure that the job is done right and done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric. That's at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number for Ramsey Heating and Electric, 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric. They sell warm winters and cool summers. 678-0459. As I promised, I'm going to try and share some of those comments from Nigel Farage. Also, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was on with Sean Hannity yesterday right here. You would have heard it on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And boy, did he ever lower the boom on America's liberals. It's 30 at 840. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about firearms in the next hour of the program. We do that on Friday mornings with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense and Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. We talk about everything from various models, what's best for you, your family members, about what might make a great gift for Christmas, which is, 9 days away. We'll talk a little bit about some of the latest laws and changes and things like that you need to know about, court rulings, etc. But I do know that a lot of people who understand the use of firearms and the importance of the use of firearms listen to this program, which is why I've been telling you this morning about our friends at the Last Stand Survival Shop in Jerome, Idaho. And I just want to remind you one more time this hour, they are offering currently, they're just starting these out so you can still get in, pistol and rifle classes. And they also have special orders, hard to find items, and they've gunsmiths on site. They can actually build you firearms, custom built for your own needs, including AR builds. And they're going to educate you about these items as well. So they welcome the questions when it comes to that. And they sell food storage. Think about that too. Just the weather outside might give you the impression we have to be on our toes when it comes to food storage, because it doesn't have to be necessarily some sort of electromagnetic pulse attack that we face, which is a possibility, I guess, at some point with the North Koreans and the Chinese. But we should be more concerned about them, by the way, than any hacking of somebody's emails. So these things are all important, and they would keep your family alive. And the shop is veteran-owned, and we mentioned they have a number of different discounts: paramedics, firefighters, military discounts, NRA members, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And you can go to their Facebook page at Last Stand Survival Shop and look at all of the details there. Lots of pictures of merchandise, and also about details on sales and the like. We've got a caller with us. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And you're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Listen, I am sick and tired of the sleazeball media who live in the bottom of the privy bucket, insinuating different things, trying to take Trump down by insinuating or saying that he's having sex with his daughter. Does that mean that because Barack Obama has two daughters who are past puberty, that he, being a black man, is having sex with them?
And then the other one, there was a fellow last night on Tucker Carlson's program from Newsweek who claimed Trump was locked up in a nut house back in 1990. And in a 9.5-minute interview, Carlson kept saying, "Where's your evidence?" And the guy was never able to produce anything.
That's exactly the point. They'll do anything to degrade Mr. Trump. Have a good day.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. Yeah, the media, for all they're squawking about, Donald Trump's going to be sending us off to Buchenwald and Auschwitz. And, well, you know what? If you'd behave yourselves and you'd do your job and you wouldn't misinform the American people and try to turn this into some sort of communist paradise of your own design, we wouldn't have a problem with you. These are patently dishonest people. And most of those that I knew, and I can tell you, I know a lot of people who are working at the network level right now when it comes to TV news. I worked with a great many of them. One of them I've been watching doing weather. He's a pretty good guy, Ron Mott. I hired Ron Mott in Vermont. Well, he was the PR guy for the Kansas City Chiefs. I wouldn't throw him into that group, but he's been out there for NBC and on the Weather Channel all week, freezing his tail off in Chicago, Illinois. But I have a lot of other people who are old coworkers who are now working at these TV networks, and some of them in very prominent positions, and I know details of their lives. I know what scoundrels they were off air. I know that they drank too much, or that they used illicit drugs in some cases, and there were a number of them. I know that they had lifestyles that would make a lot of you queasy, and the reason they went to work in this field was so they could promote that lifestyle and tell you if you didn't approve that you were a bigot. That's what that was all about. It was part of their PR effort to sell you on the idea that these were all civil rights issues. It's 8:45. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Julian Assange speaking with Sean Hannity yesterday. You would have heard it right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And Assange had this to say about, well, WikiLeaks, he's the master of it. He suggests there are several issues at stake, and he also denies all of these claims about Russians turning our election over to Donald Trump.
Can you answer whether or not there's a report out today, and there was a report out earlier this week, that in fact they can trace back some leaks to the Department of Homeland Security as it relates to the state of Georgia? Do you know anything about those?
I looked when look, let's pull back a bit. There's a deliberate attempt this week to conflate a whole lot of different issues together. It seems to be as a desire, an extremely dangerous and foolish desire, to flip members of the U.S. Electoral College around into getting up John Kasich or Hillary Clinton on the 19th. Mm-hmm. It's foolish because it won't happen. It's dangerous because the argument that it should happen can be used in 4 years' time or 8 years' time for a sitting government that doesn't want to hand over power. And that's a very dangerous thing. There's Clinton-aligned PACs putting out ads with lots of celebrities trying to push these electors to do it. So how are they rhetorically going about it? Well, there's our publications that did make significant influence during the election. Lots and lots of Americans took them up, read them, analyzed them, forwarded them to each other. It was the most discussed topic, according to Facebook, throughout October. Okay, but then we have U.S. intelligence saying they don't know how we got our stuff or when we got it, and us saying we didn't get it from a state. Then there's hacking of various systems that have occurred. Okay, presumably to get intelligence. The Israelis do it, the Russians do it, the Chinese do it, the French do it every year and every election cycle to understand what policies are.
And we keep hearing these big bad Russians. You know, I think that the liberals, to try to hold on to their revolution in this country, would start World War III with Russia. Pat Buchanan has a few thoughts about that in his column today called Lessons of Aleppo. The blunder was not in staying out of Syria's civil war, but in going in. He said Aleppo is a bloodbath born of interventionism. Now, they hope that you forget the history of how all of this developed. On August 18th, 2011, so more than 5 years ago, President Obama said, quote, "For the sake of the Syrian people, the time has come for President Assad to step aside," unquote. And then other Western leaders jumped on board and said Assad must go. Assad, however, declined to go, and he crushed an Arab Spring uprising of the kind that had ousted Mubarak in Cairo, Egypt. When the U.S. began to fund and train rebels to overthrow him, Assad rallied his troops and began bringing in allies, Hezbollah, Iran, and Russia. Now, what would happen if Assad had been urging people here in this country to overthrow President Obama? See, these are the questions, because we're God's country, right? And so whatever we decide is right, and anybody who's opposed to us must be wrong. Well, the writer goes on to say, Mr. Buchanan, in calling for the overthrow of Assad, who had not attacked or threatened us, you may remember his father had also been allied with us in the first Gulf War, we acted not in our national interest, but out of Democrat ideology. Assad is a dictator, dictators are bad, so Assad must go. Yet we had no idea who would replace him. Think about what we did with Gaddafi, who'd been a reliable U.S. ally since the outbreak of the second war with Iraq. And even before that, after 9/11, he decided that even the terrorists that were attacking us were too kooky for him. And he had been a reliable ally funneling us information, and yet we deposed him, and now we've got a government that's even worse and hostile and opposed to us and harboring terrorists who could attack us once more. Think about these issues for a moment. And then Buchanan says it soon became clear that Assad's most formidable enemies and probable successors would be the al-Nusra Front, which is the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda. That's the group we back. That's the same al-Qaeda that killed 3,000 of your countrymen 15 years ago. Or the other option was ISIS, then carrying out grisly executions in their base camp in Raqqa. U.S. policy became to back the good rebels, bomb the bad rebels, and demand that Assad depart, which is how we got here. And then, of course, you may remember, if you use poison gas and cross this line, I'm coming after you. All right, well, let me redraw the line. This is the reason no wonder the Russians don't respect these people. They know he's a wimp. Speaking of which, President Obama making all sorts of threats now about what I'm going to give Russia the what for, so they'll never hack into our systems again. And remember what Julian Assange just said. Everybody does this. Do you think the United States isn't peeking into what happens? Well, remember, the German chancellor was infuriated when she discovered a few years ago we were doing the same thing, looking at her messages. Oh, well, yeah, but see, we're the USA. So, and Barack Obama, he's a good liberal and the media loves him, so we can get away with that. If it would have been George W. Bush doing that, then there would have been demands from the media for George W. Bush's head. But since it was fellow traveler Barack Obama, that didn't happen. Mr. Obama telling Vladimir Putin in no uncertain terms, well, I don't like hacking.
Some of it may be explicit and publicized. Some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it.
Thank you for the call, Wuss. You are a great friend. A great pleasure to have you online. And then Mr. Obama went on to say he's going to give Putin a little lashing of his life.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing.
Uh-huh. And what do you propose to do? Well, I'm going to send them a strongly worded message, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to draw a new line and send another strongly worded message. Meanwhile, this is all because the globalists can't control countries like Russia, which are not playing ball with the big bankers in Europe, and have had other issues with the growth of the European Union and also NATO being at its doorstep. Remember, it was Richard Nixon who said before he died, the big mistake was telling the Russians they had to have shock therapy and then ignoring them as all of their pensioners starved and froze to death, and telling them, tough. The Barack Obama line, we won, you lost. And that if we were going to do that, we were someday going to allow the Russian people to pick strong men to run their country, and that we would end up losing them as a valuable ally in a very dangerous part of the world, such as using them as an ally to fight Islamic terrorists or as a bulwark against the Chinese. Nigel Farage appearing with Tucker Carlson on Fox News Channel last night, echoing that.
The left in Europe has so much in common with the left here. They do want conflict with Russia. That's obvious. It's becoming clear in the United States. Why is that? What's the impulse behind that? What about Russia enrages them in a way that, say, North Korea and Iran do not?
Well, they have to have an enemy, don't they? And what Putin represents, of course, for all his faults, but he represents a strong leader who believes in his own nation. They call it nationalism, nationism. They talk about these things in pejorative terms. Of course, Putin doesn't like the European project because the European project wants to make Ukraine, his next-door neighbor, a member of an alternative political and military alliance. Come on, you can't blame him for that. But no, I think all through history, you see that empires that are built, that are struggling, that are failing, they have to have an enemy. They have to have a hate figure, and it's Putin.
And it can lead to very reckless and destructive behavior, unfortunately.
I think that's right. And I think that unless we stop this European army, we could be headed for very real trouble.
And right now I've got 8:54, and it's 29. Bill Colley with you on KLIX, News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. May have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You got to hold on. Patience is a virtue. That's what my mother used to tell me. Of course, I was impatient as all get out. You're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Gosh, every time I hear that arrogant bugger talk, it just makes me want to vomit.
You might be referring to the outgoing president.
Oh, correct. And it just destroys my day. But didn't he get involved in Israel? Didn't he stick his big nose over there and finance some backing to Benjamin Netanyahu during the election? And here he is lecturing other people about doing that.
Right. And Hillary Clinton has been on record as recommending and bragging about when she interfered with elections. And you also have to remember, I think we've lost caller Pat, but you also have to remember, as part of all of this, that when the Iranians were getting ready to, or not the Iranians, the Israelis were going to take out the Iranian nuclear program, which they live a lot closer to Iran than we do. And Iran has already been saying not only death to America, but death to Israel. When we talked about, I think people have missed this, in the past and all the, because there's so much information out there, you can't keep track of what happened 3-4 years ago. President Obama said to the Israelis, if you put your planes in the air, you've got to overfly some other countries, we'll shoot you down. This is our biggest ally in that part of the world because we were going to wreck his deal with these people who still keep shouting death to America, even after he claims they're now our friends because we made a deal with him. Despite the obvious, that when they go into the streets and they burn the American flag and they burn effigies of him, how big a fool does this guy have to be, and how big a fool does he take the rest of the world to be? Coming up on 8:56, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Hey, I've been telling you for the last couple of months about some great success I've had losing weight. I'm down more than 50 pounds over the last 3 months, almost 3 months. And we're going to be talking more about this after the 9 o'clock news Monday morning on Top Story with Don Chandler, who's the fellow, he lost 50 pounds himself, who got me interested in this diet in the first place. It's called the Total Body Transformation System, and it promotes healthy weight loss and wellness. It's not some sort of fad diet. It's been approved by a great many researchers at some of the most prestigious universities in America, which in turn makes them among the most prestigious universities around the world. The company that developed this total transformation system, total body transformation system, is now in business more than 20 years. And we should point out it burns 6 times more fat, and you'll lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. And the medical replacement plan is healthier than the meals that you generally eat. And while losing weight, still eating healthy is possible. You can still have a healthy amount of calories, and that means you're not going to be hungry. The average participant is losing 22 pounds in just 60 days. And we wanted to point out as well that it will help with that fat burning and also give you a boost of energy. In fact, some days I wonder where all the energy came from, and just it's like coming out of a magical bottle. He backs all this up, Don does, with a unconditional full money back guarantee. And if you'd like to know more, and I know that a lot of you will come out of the holiday season after you have all those big meals at Christmas and New Year's, you may be thinking now it's time. This will help you with those resolutions that a lot of people don't often keep. You can give Don a call. His telephone number, of course, area code 208. He's right here in Twin Falls. 731-3560. That's 731-3560. Going to be talking firearms in the next hour of the program. We do that on Friday mornings. This is your opportunity. If you have a question or comment, you need to know more, you can give us a telephone call in the next hour. As we brought up last week, firearms and oftentimes a training class make great gifts for your loved ones. Keeping your loved ones alive in a crisis is a great thing to do. 31 right now. News, though, first from Fox coming up at 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.